Hi there folks, this is Adam with 8 Badge Gaming coming to you today with the final video in our Lapras Waterbox deck series. Now the final video, as you can see on your screen here now, is going to be the deck review. Now this is where we're going to discuss the decks that we've played against there today, or rather over the past week, the various decks that we've found were the good matchups versus the bad matchups, what our win-loss ratio was, and what changes we might consider making to the deck. Now, in a first, we actually ended up playing 6 games across our game series this week, mainly because we did have a couple of short games where we were paired up against decks. Both of them ended up actually being Malamar builds that didn't get off the ground to start off. They ended up getting pretty card stuck. They didn't have the great consistency that they needed to really kind of take away the games overall, and ended up just conceding within the first few minutes. Now, our overall record out of 6 total games played ended up being 5-1, with 2 of them being snap concessions from our opponents. The only actual loss we ended up having was against the Zoroark Decidueye deck. They did have a good bit of luck as well as great gameplay skill on their side, looking at hitting some very exact numbers to take the win off of us. We ended up beating the Zoroark Lycanroc deck, ended up having a good bit of advantage through the Volcanion Prism Star there, getting the 20 damage spread on the Lycanrocs as well as the Zoroarks, brought them down to within one-shot range of a Blizzard Burn plus Choice Band. For the Zoroark Decidueye deck, we didn't get it going the same way that we wanted to, where we get a little bit of a spread, followed by some very powerful Blizzard Burns. Our opponent was able to take out our Choice Bands as well, which kind of put us behind and didn't give us a great win there, so we ended up getting a loss, and we ended up just segueing directly into our next game, which was Buzzwole Lycanroc. Now, this was the Buzzwole Lycanroc list that seemed to be much more heavy on their regular Buzzwoles, which we're fine against. We can suit up just as fast, if not faster, than the Buzzwole decks can, outside of the mid-game where they have access to the Beast Rings now, but with our Aqua Patches and Max Elixirs, we're going to be able to suit up Lapras just as fast as they are initially with just their Max Elixirs and regular energy attachments. We are also a little bit more consistent to hit off our Max Elixirs, and we're going to one-shot them just as easily as they would one-shot us. We did get a win against the other Malamar mix that had Fighting and Fairy, but we never got to see exactly what that was for. I know some people have been talking about a Gardevoir list running Malamar just for additional energy attachments to allow for huge damage hits from the Gardevoirs, but I don't know if that would have been exactly what we were playing against, as we didn't get to see anything besides a Lele and a couple Inkays. We never really got the chance to see exactly what their deck was trying to do. Finally, we ended up getting paired against the Baby Buzzwole deck, so that was the variant that runs the triple Baby Buzzwoles, and we only saw one regular Buzzwole GX. That was also a very close matchup. Involved some tight play from our opponent and some lucky plays on our side to overall take a win in that match. Now, in review of the deck, this is a very strong and fairly consistent deck. Where we are running the 2-2 line of the Remoraid Octillery, we can usually fairly consistently get it actually up and running during one of our games. The Volcanion Prism Star was definitely a very useful card. The Jet Geyser ability not only gets energy out of your hand to allow you to Aqua Patch it, but it puts a kink in your opponent's plans when you force up one of their inactives into the active that they weren't expecting. It can force your opponent to put up either an already weakened Pokemon or something like a Lele or the sorts that will then let us just take a KO with a Blizzard Burn. And as it's mainly just a switch effect which doesn't actually force anything out on our side, it just can be a very useful utility card. The Sonoblast, as well, being able to put 20 damage on some of your opponent's benched Pokemon, as well as 100 on the active. We're usually looking at a 2-shot on the active, especially if we have a Choice Band. We don't have to really worry about the retreat cost due to our mana fees, and we're looking at getting the spread damage on our opponent's bench, which can allow us to one-shot their benched Pokemon then as well, say any of the typical 200 or 210 HPers. So that's like looking at, say, your Lucarios, your Lycanrocs, your Zoroarks, your Glissopods, etc. And Glissopod is a worry for this deck, mainly because of Lapras's weakness to fighting, or rather not fighting, but the grass energy there. Being able to take 20 damage from a Gliscopod means that any first impression, any adamantine press will be a one-shot KO on our Lapras no matter what. There's nothing in the deck that's really going to take it beyond the one-shot. Now, I suppose technically if we had something like a Fighting Fury built in here, we could use that to bring our Lapras up to 230 HP, which means that we dodge a adamantine press, but we're not really dodging the first impression, which is what the deck is really trying to do for the actual, say, Zoroark Golisopod decks. I don't think we need to adjust our Lele counts, and overall the deck itself is pretty custom tailored. I might consider an additional Field Blower in some metas, depending on if you are facing a lot of Garbodors. I don't know exactly what we would actually kind of cut or shave down on. Potentially maybe a Guzma to go up that additional Field Blower, but the Guzmas can be effective as well in just allowing you to force up the Garbotoxins and take a knockout on them. The ability Shutdown isn't terribly bad for this deck, while we do have quite a few abilities that are going to be applicable, primarily the free retreat ability for anything that has a water energy on it. For our Manaphy EX, the Aqua Tube, the Abyssal Hand to allow us to get cards in hand, and the Jet Geyser from the Volcanion Prism are all very applicable abilities, but we can just win without them. So we can still just have consistently strong hands that just push us essentially beyond what we would normally be able to do for most decks that depend heavily on abilities when they get shut down by the Garbotoxin Garbodor. Now, with the overall counts in the deck, I actually can't really recommend any changes here other than maybe, say, the 1-1 change on the Guzma, down a Guzma, up a Field Blower if you're in a Garbotoxin heavy meta. The energy switches were incredibly useful. The free retreats that the Aquatube give let us take a Pokemon out of the active, put another one in, and then energy switch, being able to force an energy up onto the new active, is just going to give you so many strong plays. I don't think you want more than the 2 of. I think 2 was the right number. I think 4 of Max Elixir is a must for this deck. 4 of Ultra Ball is a must for this deck, as not only just an additional discard outlet for your water energies to be able to patch them in, but to be able to get the pieces that you need to make sure that the deck can operate consistently. Draw supporter wise, I might consider going down an N to go up a 4th Cynthia, just because there's a lot of times that we had an N in hand and we didn't want to use it because we didn't want to put our opponent up cards in hand. So there's going to be times that N can be great, it can be bad. Where we are running Octilleries, I still think that the 2 count on the N might be the best choice, just because there's going to be situations where you want to be able to end your opponent down cards in hand, and you have something like an Octillery that will just let you put yourself up cards in hand as well. Also, being able to end a mess up with your opponent's tutors or things like that, say if you get matched up against Sylveon and they tutor their deck for 3 cards, being able to mess up what they've searched for with an N can also be extremely applicable. Overall, I did greatly enjoy playing the deck. It's very consistent, it's very strong. If you don't have a lot of Golisopod in your meta, if you have a lot of things with 190 HP, say Buzzballs and things like that, the Lapras is going to be a strong choice. It's going to let you suit up a slight bit faster than a Buzzball, take one-shots on Buzzballs before they can take one-shots on you back, and with the free retreat capability through the Aqua Tube, if you can get to Lapras is going, then you don't have to worry about the turn off afterwards after using a Blizzard Burn. You'll just be able to retreat your active into one of your bench Laprases and just keep the Blizzard Burn train going. And if you can just get a sequence of Blizzard Burn after Blizzard Burn after Blizzard Burn, it's going to be very hard for you to lose that game. Overall, I would give this deck definitely at least an A, edging towards an A+, just because it has finely tailored, it has great consistency, it has good one-shot capability. We did end up going 5-1 with the deck. The only loss we had was against the Zoroark Decidueye, which isn't exactly a tiered deck at the moment, so I don't know if I would push this down to a B+ because of it losing to a Zoroark variant, because it's a subpar Zoroark variant for most of the tier 1 capability now. It's still a very great deck. It requires a good pilot to be able to pilot it to the wins that it needs, but it's not exactly placing in top 8s or even top 64s in regionals that you see around the world. I would highly recommend this deck to other people that would like to play the game. I would highly recommend this to newer players. It's a fairly straightforward deck. There's not a lot of complexity to it for new players, but there can be a good bit of complexity to the experienced player to know exactly how to play this deck from start to finish. I would rank myself overall mediocre, and I was still able to take this deck to a 5-1. So I think that is a great show of how good the deck is, how simple it can be to use, and as mentioned, would recommend playing it again. So while this is going to be a short deck review video, I again would like to thank everyone for your viewership this week. I do greatly appreciate, or rather all of us here at A Badge Gaming greatly appreciate your viewership overall, your votes for what decks you'd like to see, your comments, your questions, your queries, everything related to us just trying to grow the Pokemon TCG scene locally, as well as provide some content that you're actually going to be able to view that's not exactly pros kicking around. I know, say, people like Tablemon and things like that will show a lot of the Tier 1 decks that they play on their roads to Worlds, on their roads to Regionals, etc. But for us, we're just trying to keep it a little bit more casual, and that's why you're going to see cropping up in our polls for which deck you'd like to see on our Facebook page. You're going to see some odd variants there. Now, once we get into Celestial Storm Standard, we're likely going to be showing the Tier 1 decks to start, what people can expect to see as the big decks of the season, the big decks of the actual series that we plan to play. But we're likely going to also be able to have more cards that are going to let us do some fun stuff. So, as always, thank you for your viewership. I know I'm sounding like a broken record there so far. And this is Adam with 8 Badge Gaming signing off.